This morning, though, I want to talk to you guys about those who are in need of answers. Those in need of answers. Who needs Christmas? Those who are in need of answers. I know that there is an immense amount of confusion, an immense amount of just trying to understand what's going on, trying to understand what life is, trying to understand where we're headed, and just trying to make sense of all of this. I was doing some research. I was trying to look up some articles. I was looking for some messages from other pastors to get some, influence about what God wanted me to share this morning. And just a mere search on the internet, I found more of the topic, how to handle unanswered questions, or how to handle unanswered prayers, as opposed to the delight of answered prayers. The delight of good things happening, the delight of wonderful things being experienced. And so, we need to break everything away from the answers we assume that we need most. All right? We need to break everything away from the answers we assume that we need the most, and we will discover something more desperate within our souls. We will discover something that we really need. Breaking away from the answers we believe we need the most, we will discover something more desperate within us. The question of the longing heart. It's the who, it's the what, it's the where, it's the when, it's the how, it's the why, it's all of life. I was trying to find out, what is the question? What is the question of experience? What is the question of life? What is the most important question? And all I kept coming up with is another question to try to define the question. And so when I ask you, we need an answer, when I say that those who need Christmas need an answer, the only way I know how to explain it is by saying a blank stare. What do we need an answer to? Right? We can't always define it. We can articulate it. I mean, we have the why. Why this? Why that? That's when we ask a lot. We have the who's, the what's, the where's, the when's, the how's. We've got all those things. We've got all those things that we're trying to discover and trying to figure out. But we just have this moment. A lot of us have this moment in our lives, or we are moving towards this moment where we just find ourselves blank. Looking out throughout life, looking out through creation, looking out through everything that's going on, looking out and seeing the world as it is and just wondering, what? Right? I know that seems very uneducated to say it like that, but that's seriously the only thing I could come up with. And we want answers. We really, really want answers. Now, I've discovered throughout the time of sharing the Christmas story, especially with my kids, we have navigated it for the most part without much awkwardness, okay? And so you say the word Immaculate Conception, and some of the younger ones are looking at you like, what are you talking about? I don't understand that. And so my youngest, Nora, she's 5 years old. Things are beginning to catch up. And she said, well, Dad, and we were talking about how Mary was pregnant, how she was going to give birth and all this stuff. And she looked at me and she said, Dad, and I saw that inquisitive look in her face. And I was like, oh, no. Right? Oh, boy. And so I thought it was going to be the talk. I'm like, but she throws this one at me. Dad, how do the babies come out of the belly? And I'm like, that's your mother. Did she ever ask you? Oh, man, disaster averted. No, but we all get to those stages in our life, right? We all get to those stages in our maturity. We all get to those stages in our development where we begin to ask other questions. We all begin to come to places of understanding. And we all come to discoveries. And we're like, wow, that's an answer. That's huge. I get it now. I get where babies come from. I get how it all works. Ooh, my parents navigated it. Somehow they figured out how to talk to me about it. I'm still feeling kind of awkward about the whole thing, but I figured it out now, okay? And there's spiritual things. There's spiritual things in our life where we come to discovery. We come to moments where we get it, where we understand, where we can wrap our minds around it, and maturity and development is happening, but then we come to other questions. Other confusion, I don't know, I don't understand, I don't get it. God, help me to make sense of these things. Help me to make sense of what's going on in my life. Help me, all right, help me. On the PowerPoint slide, I didn't know how else to explain it as I've been sharing with you, is there's this big blank there. We all have the question, whatever the question is, the question that's most important to us. The question that we need to make sense of the most. The question of who is Jesus? Who is God? How is it going to affect my life? What is going on in the world around me? Where am I going? Where should I go? Where did all of these things go? When is it all going to happen? How is it going to happen? And one of the biggest questions that I've discovered in my own personal life is the why. Why this? Why that, Lord? Why did this have to happen? Why did I have to experience this? Why did I have to go through this? In Isaiah 25, 9 and 10 in the Message translation of the Bible, it says, also at that time people will say, look at what's happened. This is our God. We waited for him and he showed up and saved us. This God, the one we waited for. Let's celebrate. Let's sing the joys of his salvation. God's hand rests on this mountain. And so here we are, the question of life. Just as children ask questions, we ask questions. When the storm comes up and suddenly hits our life, why is this happening? It's followed shortly after, how can I make it stop, right? When trials rage, what's going to happen to me? When will it end? Where can I find the cause and keep it from happening again? What good is going to come of this? How am I going to get through this? And here's the thing, like we assume that the questions always come when things get rough, and they often do. That's often where the questions come from. But have you ever discovered when life is going good and things are well, when you walk out onto the parking lot, like when I walk out into the parking lot and the sun has come down and I look up towards the stars in the sky and I'm like, wow. How? What? Right? It leaves us with a blank thought in our mind. Even when my life has been in the most incredible places. And I pray that God would continue to lead me towards that, where I would say, why, God, have you blessed me like this? Why, God, what is the purpose of you extending your grace and extending your mercy to me? Even in pleasure beyond pleasure, we have something in us that wonders. Something in us that wonders. And as we ponder the universe, as we think about the cosmos, we all have so much to ask. We have all have answers that we want to get. We want to come to that discovery. And we tend to do what the rest of society does, right? Like, if we don't come up with the answer, maybe we hop on the internet, we start asking questions. We start asking, like, how what are other people experiencing? Like, blogging is like this like incredible, thing that's just like exponentially growing. You can find blogs upon blogs upon blogs. I know it sounds weird. Some of you are like, what is a blog? Essentially, it's like articles online that people are writing about life experience, about discoveries that they've come to about things. All right? And we will search, like, how to get through this, how to deal with this, how to overcome this. And we come to what we believe are, simple and easy answers sometimes. We get on Pinterest or social media and we'll say, okay, we'll come to these quotes, and we believe that at times when we come to these quotes, like, this author said this, or this person said this, or this person who was wise and brilliant said this. This is the answer to my question. This is great. Nope. What? We can even go to the Bible. And we're like, yes, I'm going to go to the good book. Some of us are like, okay, I'm going to grab the Bible and I'm going to go like this. He called down famine on the land. Like, seriously, that's just what I found. That's not working for me. It's not happening. What? Oh, boy. All right, I mean, sure, there's context there. I'm sure that now that I lost my place, I'm going to have to try to figure it out later so that I can make sense of it. But, like we come to these places where we think the Bible's going to be the answer, and then we extract a verse, and we're like, oh, sweet, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. No, I cannot jump and slam dunk. It's just not going to happen. I do not have the strength and the capacity in my legs to get up there. Thanks, babe. Thanks. She just wants to watch me fall and laugh hysterically. And so, when we don't come to the answers, what do? Distraction. Netflix. Amazon Prime, right? Whoa. Hulu, whatever, trending, internet streaming service. Television, all right? That seems like such an archaic thought now. I never thought that I would get to that point where the big, square screens that took a bodybuilder to move out of a house are now replaced with these things that are so slim that if your kid accidentally, hits it with a soft ball, it might crack. And we get on these things. We get on these things and we entertain ourselves. I got to distract my mind from what I'm dealing with right now. I don't get it, so I'm just going to look at something else. I'm going to fill my mind with other things. I'm going to entertain myself with other things so I don't have to deal with this thing. I don't have to deal with this thing. But we need to bring our questions to God. Not in a defiant, shake our fists in the air kind of way. Though those kind of ways sometimes we feel are merited because of the things that we're going through. But maybe for a minute we need to step back and say, okay, I'm going to bring my questions to you, God. I'm not going to be defiant. I'm not going to shake my fist at heaven and say, why? But as one who trusts that God hears and that God cares. Someone who that God is someone who hears and someone who cares. That He is really, really interested in what I'm facing. He is really, really interested in what I'm experiencing. He's interested in what I'm going through. Even when I'm like, Jesus, help me explain to my youngest daughter how babies are born. Like, seriously, He's interested in that. Why? Because He knows the decisions that you make from early on, the conversations you have from that point when your children become, get into places of real powerful and significant discoveries in their lives, if you start them out explaining the things, to them, that it changes everything about their future, everything about their life, everything about where they're going. And just like our children need to, at the beginning of maturity, ask their parents for understanding as their parents lead them and rear them, as we say, we need to go to God as we mature and as we ask Him, okay, what's next? Where am I headed? Yes, I've got to this place of maturity. I understand a little bit more, but I need you to explain this to me. Now hang with me for a minute because you're wondering, what does this have to do with Jesus? Well, Jesus is the answer, makes us sincere or cynical. Think about that for a minute. Jesus is the answer. Like, okay, Jesus is the answer. What? Oh, that's super cool. I'm going to read some things. I'm going to ask Jesus to help me out. Jesus is the answer. And then we can find sincerity in that. We can find discovery in that. We can read the Gospels, the New Testament, come to some very powerful understandings. We're like, whoa, that's amazing. Everything's changing. Or we can hear someone say that Jesus is the answer, and we're like, what? That's not an answer. That doesn't help me go through this. That's not going to give me what I need. That's not going to help me. That's not going to improve what I'm facing right now. And so here we are at the question. We're facing crazy and complicated things. Our families are going through difficult challenges that are huge, huge mountains. The world is shifting and changing at a dramatically fast pace. We're having a hard time keeping up with the pressures of each day. Life is heavy, so heavy that the list seems almost trivial. So heavy that honestly, we've got to understand that only Jesus can lift it. He's all I have to get through the day. He's all I have to get through the day. There are times when I go into work at Easter Seals, I hit the residential floor, and I'm like, okay, Jesus, we got this. High five, I'm moving. And I'm like, Jesus is the answer. Other times, I walk up on that residential floor, and I'm like, Jesus, we got this. Let's do this. We all face that. Sometimes, some of us, it's before we even get out of bed. Before we even get, the alarm went off this morning, and I'm like, nothing personal, okay? I know it's church, it's Sunday. You're like, Pastor, you should wake up excited and pumped. Like, seriously. But the bed was warm, all right? And I was enjoying the cuddle I was in. Yeah, I know I just made it awkward. Sorry, Grace. But don't worry, there was a child on the other side of Kelly, so it was PG. I can't believe I just said that. Retract it, because my wife is in the back of the room saying, I'm going to beat you later. My advice when life is heavy, it's Jesus. My advice when the unexpected happens, it's Jesus. My advice when sickness abounds, it is Jesus. My advice when I just don't know is Jesus. My advice when, whatever it is, this is not a pat answer. This is not just a Christian answer. It's the truth. He's the way. He's the truth. He is the life. He is a solid rock. He is a refuge in place of trouble. Jesus alone. And until we saturate our minds with that and bury ourselves completely in that truth, we will consistently go to other things to try to find discovery, only to notice that those things aren't answering the answer. They're not giving us the answers we need. The answers that can only be discovered in Jesus. Just keep going. Just follow him. In John chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, this is explaining Jesus as he was coming, as John articulates, and he's talking about how Jesus existed, and this is hard to wrap our minds around, but Jesus was in heaven before he was on earth, and he's starting at the very beginning of all, that it was black, it was dark, there was nothing created, there was nothing but void, and he's like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And by the magic of forgive me for the words, but the magic, for the wonder of his artisan nature, he just begins to, just throw this incredibly imaginative world into existence. He's like, I'm going to throw some stars up there. Whew, look at that. I'm going to make this planet. I'm going to make another planet. It's going to be over here, and it's going to be over there, and it's going to be amazing. Oh, and earth. Whew, just wait till I get started with that. They're going to make water that brings life, and I'm going to make these lush plants that are just beautiful and wonderful to look at. I'm going to make animals that are going to roam the earth. I'm going to make all these wonderful things. And then he's like, oh, something comes to mind. He's like, I'm going to make man and woman, and this is going to be awesome, right? And then, he's like, okay, I'm going to get some dirt from the ground, and I'm going to build a man, and I'm going to breathe life into him. And then he's like, oh, man's alone. Go to sleep. I'm just going to take a little part of you, right? And as corny and cheesy as this sounds, Adam woke up and said, whoa, man. Wow. So in John chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, it says the Word became flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And he was with God in the beginning. Through him all things are made. Through him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Or other translation says, the darkness cannot extinguish it or put it out or snuff it. It cannot stop that light from shining, right? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, right? Hide under a bushel? No. Right? No, you're not going to blow this out. You're not going to stop this from happening. And I love the beginning of this verse because it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and he was with God in the beginning. And it talks about how he is the Word. That everything that exists in the Bible, everything that is spoken from God, everything that is given from his mouth exists in Jesus. He became the perfect manifestation of who God is to walk this earth. Jesus is the answer to every heart's cry. Jesus is the answer to every heart's cry. He is the answer. He was the Word. He was with God, right? And he became life. In him was life, and that life was the light of mankind. He existed. He was born. He was born of a virgin and began to walk this earth as a man. Jesus is the answer to every heart's cry. Jesus is the answer to everything that we need. Jesus is the answer to our most desperate pleas. Jesus is the answer that we need in life's most painful experiences. Jesus is the answer in life's most delightful experiences. This is the deliberate echo of the creation story of Genesis when we read it here. It takes us back before time began, the moment that God interrupted silence and speaks everything into existence. And the Word, Jesus, is always speaking, is always saying something, is always sharing something with us. He always has something to say. Always. The question is are we listening? Are we listening? You see, Jesus is manifested through his voice. Voice is that which is spoken and that which is heard. It comes on both sides of any communication event. It's the bridge, it's the gap, it bridges the gap between sender and receiver. The book of John intends that in Jesus, God is speaking and revealing himself to the world. In Jesus, God is speaking. Jesus is manifested through God's voice. Jesus is manifested. I want to hear Jesus. I want to experience Jesus. I want answers, so I'm going to listen. Yes, I know that it seems absurd that we would listen for the voice of God in assumption that we were going to hear him speaking to us in audible form. When's the last time you got into the Bible? When was the last time you actually got on your knees and prayed and asked God for direction, asked God for more than inspiration, asked God for specific needs? When is the last time you opened your ears to a friend that you trust who is faithful and believes the same things you do and asked them to be a conduit of God's voice to us? When is the last time? You see, Jesus' voice is distinct. Jesus' voice is personal. His voice is personal. He wants to talk to us. We can distinguish people from another person simply by their voice. We can distinguish who someone is. We know who someone is. Our children know who we are by our voice. They can, they hear us calling out from another spot in the room or another place, and they know exactly immediately that's dad, that's mom, right? That's Mimi, Papa, Grandma, Grandpa, whatever it is that you fit, whatever role that is. They know your voice. We need to know his voice. In John 10, 1 through 5, he says, "Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way is a thief and a robber." He's making an illustration. He's talking about how, those who he is leading are like sheep. And it says the gatekeeper opens the gate. He opens the gate for him. And sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. He leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize the stranger's voice. Do you recognize Jesus speaking? Do you recognize his voice? Do you notice when he is talking? Now, there are obvious answers as to what you can hear him saying. He is not going to tell you to do something that opposites what he asks in the first place. He's not going to say, "Hey, Seth, go murder that person." He's not going to say that. Okay? He's not going to say that. He's not going to tell us that. He is going to speak in ways that are not contrary to who he is. We can be sure of that. But John desires that we know Jesus is the Son of God and believe in him personally. The more intimate, the more close, the more we discover who he is, the more we're going to hear him. And Jesus' voice is dynamic in that it reflects the powerful activity of a living God. This is where those questions become answers. This is where those things become discovery. When you begin to notice that Jesus is speaking, that it's dynamic and that it reflects the powerful activity of a living God, it is historical. That in any act of speaking comes to expression and takes place in a real world as a voice calling, demanding response. It challenges any notion that the Christian faith can be reduced to rules, propositions, or doctrines that can be merely believed or dismissed and not lived out in our lives. This is more than just a set of criteria that we fall in line with. This is a living God that was born, and this is a living Lord that was born and walked the planet and shared who he was with the world around him, and is continuing to share who he is to the world today. We take for granted this book. I've seen videos of people in other nations who have had a suitcase open with the Bible right there in front of them, and they're grabbing them madly and kissing the Bible with tears in their eyes because they realize just how precious a thing it is that they hold in their hand. And then you watch. You're like, whoa, that's horrible. But you watch as they begin to rip chapters out of that Bible. Why? Because they want to share the wealth of what God has just given them. They're like, okay, I'm going to give you the book of Luke, or I'm going to give you the book of Ephesians. I'm going to give you Genesis. And they're passing it around, and then they pass it around some more so that they can learn, so they can grow and develop and mature in their faith. If you want to hear from God, you need to start reading this book. It is incredible. It is incredible. It will speak to you. It will speak to you in amazing ways. Now, in John chapter 1, I know that I don't have this on the screen here, but in verse 14, it says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. He is the Word. He is the words that we need to hear right now. He is the incarnate, living, created, the one that moment was created. Forgive me, he wasn't created. He always existed. He was that one that moment was created where Jesus was born, the Word in flesh form. As the message says, he moved into the neighborhood. He moved into the neighborhood. I know. Some of you are like, wait, what? I thought you were going to give me some answers this morning, Pastor. I did. I told you where you can go find them. You're gonna feel like there's radio static and silence every once in a while, maybe a lot of the time, when you ask the why. Why did this happen? Why did it have to happen this way? What took place? God, I need answers. And there are going to be times where God manifests himself through me and others, your friends, your peers, me as your pastor, and I'm going to be able to share things with you that God has spoken to me. But don't you ever allow what others say to replace the intimacy and relationship that you can have with the Lord yourself. Don't allow me to fit into that place, because I will not give you what only he can give you. If you need those answers, you're going to need to start a conversation with him. A bold, honest, and brave conversation. You see, Jesus is the answer to every heart's cry, so rest in him. He is the answer. He is the answer. He is the answer to what we need most. He is the answer to our resurrection. He is the answer to the freedom from our sin. He is the answer that declares hope in hopelessness. He is the answer that provides for us release and forgiveness. He is the answer that brings us to heaven. He is the answer of a people who cried out for God to come and rescue them. He is the answer. He is the answer to your greatest need. He is the answer to your greatest pain. I cannot explain it with words. Maybe I'm not supposed to. Maybe I don't know how to. But he became the answer that I needed most when there was a void where my Father should have existed. Where my Father should have been. My dad should have been one who spoke into my life and helped me and reared me and led me. And there was no one there. He was non-existent, figuratively and then literally. And I'm like, I need an answer, Lord. I need to know where to go and what to do. And there were many answers along the way, but ultimately it was when I cried out to Jesus and said, I need an answer, he became the answer. He filled that void. He filled that place. He was the one who led me to discovery after discovery after discovery of what it means to be a man. And I'm still tripping and failing through it and coming to places that of great discovery where I've messed up with my kids, and then I can find grace and mercy with my kids. But he became the answer to that great void. Whatever the void is in your life, he will become the answer to. It's beautiful because you may never hear the why, but that doesn't mean that Jesus isn't the answer. Why? Because he leads you through the why. He leads you through the what. He leads you through whatever it is that you're asking. And so, if you need answers today, ask him. Pray. Like intense, crazy kind of prayers. Like don't, be respectful and respond to him in his glory, but step back and say, God, I don't get it. I know you said Jesus is the answer, so prove to me, show me how he is the answer. I need that right now. I need to know. I need to understand why I am on this current, in this current chapter in my life. Why I'm in this season, as we say. Why am I here? What are you doing here? What do I need to discover here? Who's the one I need? How am I going to be free of those things? There are so many times in my own life where I looked towards heaven and my question was so real that I couldn't even put a phrase in front of it. I just did not get it. And so I looked to heaven and I just allowed his glory to invade my life and bring me freedom and peace. It's just like, whoa. He wants to answer you. Instead of pondering all the unanswered things, start searching for the things he has answered. Remind yourself of how he has spoken, what you have learned, what you have discovered. He wants to respond. He does. He is answering questions. I guess one of the big questions that we need to answer this morning is, are we listening? Are we listening? Who needs Christmas? Who needs Christmas? Those in need of answers. Are you catching what I'm putting down? Okay. Jesus, I thank you so much for today. I thank you for truth, and I thank you for discovery. Lord, through all the words that I shared this morning, I pray, Father, that the truth would just find itself fully expressed and exposed. God, that you would just allow the people in this room to discover exactly what it is that you're saying to them right now, beyond what I just had to say. Jesus, that your answer to them would be powerful, that it would be profound, that it would change everything. Jesus, I pray right now for real and significant discovery and answers, because we chose to not pursue answers through all that this world has to offer, but we sought answers from you and you alone, Jesus, and that we would hear your voice as you speak to us through your Son, Jesus. Jesus, may you be real in our lives, not a fictional character or an assumption that we believe was a pretty neat idea, but not really what the Bible says it is. That our resurrected King, our resurrected Lord that we have submitted ourselves to, would lead us to places of discovery that we so desperately need this morning. As you answer, Lord, help us to listen. Amen.